Hello and welcome to month number 2 of the original dollar building block program, Back to Basics. My name is Keegan and I'll be your instructor this month. This month we are working on a lovely optical illusion block called Magic Card Trick. This block uses 3 different fabrics, a light and 2 colors. Color number 1 is considered the light in this pattern. You will need to keep that in mind for reference as we go through our pattern. Colors 2 and 3 are interchangeable, but you need to decide which one is which. We're going to go ahead and start by preparing our fabrics with Material Magic and Flatter. You're going to take all of your fabrics, lay them out, and completely saturate them with product. Once they're completely saturated with the product, you're going to let them dry until they're 90% dry, just like we did last month, and then completely steam dry them to bone dry. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that all of these are completely saturated. Perfect. Once they're completely saturated, again, we're going to wait until they're 90% dry and then go ahead and steam dry them. So once they're dry, we'll be back to be able to dry them the rest of the way. And now we're back. The fabric is 90% dry, slightly damp to the touch, and so what we're going to do is we're going to completely steam these fabrics the rest of the way dry. Okay? Three. Now that we have all 3 of the fabrics done, we are going to go ahead and go to our cutting table, me back there, and we're going to talk about the cutting for this entire block. Perfect. Now we're back at the cutting table. What we're going to do is we're going to learn how to accurately read our pattern. As long as we know how to accurately read our pattern, this project is extremely, extremely, extremely easy as long as you do exactly what the pattern says, as well as lay out your block on our design board before we physically stitch it out. So, color 1, it says in our pattern that it is considered the background fabric for this block. If you want, since they're all the same sizes, if you want to do different stuff, that's totally fine, totally up to you. But the lightest one is technically the background. So we're going to go ahead and do a 2 ruler clean cut, lining up a line completely across the bottom of the square, butting it up, pulling away, and cutting a clean edge. 2 ruler clean cut. We're going to set this aside. This is excess. We're going to start by cutting 1 5 1/4 inch square. The fabric sizes are the same. The square sizes are ultimately the same, but what's different is what we cut it into. So we're going to cut 1 5 1/4 inch square, done, and 2 4 7/8 inch squares. The 7/8 is the last tiny little line right before the large line of the 5 inches. 4 7/8 and 4 7/8. Putting that in a separate pile. This is excess. And we're going to do 4 7/8 yet again. This is all excess, just in case you make a mistake. We like that. We are here for you. But again, if you make a mistake beyond the extra that we've given you, it's $5 for an extra kit. So we'll call this green color 2. Color 2 needs these same exact ones, but we just need to make sure that we keep a mental note of which one is which. So I'm lining this up across the bottom, butting the ruler up against it, pulling it away, and cutting excess ruler away. We're going to do 5 1/4 inch square and 2 4 7/8 inch squares. So we'll start with the 5 1/4, color 2. And 2 4 7/8 inch squares. So there's 1 strip, 2 strips, making sure you're lining up a line of the ruler along the base. Excess. We're now going to do a 2 ruler clean cut. I heard you screaming it. I'm just kidding. Line up a line, cross the bottom with your square, pull that away, flat up and cut. You need to start like a little jingle with those steps. Butt it up and cut. 1 5 1/4 inch square. And 2 4 7/8 inch squares. Yes, you do have a lot of excess in this kit because we're nice. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong or didn't cut something the right size or enough of them. It just means that we're nice people. Merry Christmas. 2. Okay, perfect. Colors 1, 2, and 3 on the board for both 1 each of 5 1/4 inch squares and 2 each of 4 7/8 inch squares. You're going to take your pattern, you're going to turn to the next page. The next page says to cut stack at 1. So A means a singular, correct? So 1 4 7/8 inch square of color 2 and color 3. 1, correct? And then we're going to go corner to corner on the 45 degree and cut them into half square triangles, correct? In order to make 2 half square triangles of each. 1 2 1 2, correct? Set those to the side. Now we're going to stack all 3 of the color 1, 2, and color 3 5 1/4 inch squares. So we're going to stack those. Perfect. We have all 3 stacked. We're going to cut them from corner to corner, just like we did, and then without moving anything, this is a great way to use a rotating cutting mat, but you can walk around to the opposite side like I did, cut on the opposite angle. You now have 4 quarter square triangles of each, as it says in the pattern, correct? Yes. So we're going to set those to the side. Now what we're going to do is we have 1 each of these 2 colors and 1 each of color 1 background squares. We're going to put them right sides together in a sandwich on top of each of the colors, color 1 and color 2, making sure that it is perfectly lined up and even. Now that we have our sandwiches, we're going to take our felt tipped friction marker and we're going to mark corner to corner on both of the background squares, which is color 1, like so. Corner to corner, perfect, perfect. Corner to corner, perfect. Now what we're going to do is we have everything together. We're going to talk about sewing these units and then lay out our actual complete block. And then we are going to start sewing it together. So we'll meet me back at the sewing machine and we'll talk about sewing these easy stacked half square triangle. Now we're at the sewing machine. What we're going to do is we're going to take those units that we of the 4 7/8 inch squares that we marked, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away on each side of the line, rotating in order to do the opposite side. So we'll go ahead and start with the first side, which will be the 1/4 inch on the left. We'll cut. And then you'll see that I flip this unit around so that the unsewn side is on the left, and sew a 1/4 inch from that side as well. I'm going to repeat that on the color 2 unit, which is our green. Remember that color 1, 2, and 3 are what you assign to color 1, 2, and 3. So make sure to put a little swatch of the, if you can't keep it straight in your mind, put a little swatch of what the fabric is next to the name and the pattern. There's plenty of space in order to do that. Perfect. Now that both of these are sewn all nice and perfect, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut on the line and then press towards the dark of the half square triangle units that we have now made. So I'm going to cut on the line, press towards the dark, and trim these down to 4.5 inches. Once I've done that, then we're going to go ahead and come back. I'm actually going to show you how to trim these. So come back, we'll trim, and then we will start assembling our block. Welcome back. Now we're at the ironing board. I'm going to take my long spring action shears and I'm going to cut along the line that we had previously drawn to separate the 2 half square triangle units of each color. We should have yielded 4 total half square triangle units. So lock those. We're going to go ahead, make our iron hot again, and we're going to press towards the darker color. In this case, it would be the green for the color 2 and the teal for the color 3. So we're going to go ahead, open these guys up towards the dark, and we're going to press towards the darker material. That way it's not showing. One. Ooh, that pineapple grove smells so good. Okay. Number 2. And number 3. Awesome. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our square ruler by Creative Grids and our rotary cutter and make sure that these are 4.5 inches. Now we're going to make the angle point up into the upper right-hand side and just check these. This is 4.5 inches. That's great. 4.5 inches on the money. I'm lining up that line that runs through the 45-degree on the square on the seam line, and that's 4.5 inches. And again, 4.5 inches. Awesome. So we didn't have to do any trimming. If your seam allowances are a little bit smaller than 1/4 inch, then you would have needed to trim those down. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you on the design board exactly how we're going to lay out this block. So we'll be right back with design board and the other triangular pieces. Now we're back. We have our design board, all of our pieces, and our pattern, which will be an important part in making sure that we understand where everything goes. So what we're going to do is we are going to first make a center block that rotates around these 1/4 square triangles. So you're going to put colors 2 and 3 in the center, okay? Not color 1. Color 1 is no, not in this one. So there is our center unit, okay? That is the center square. We are then going to take our half square triangles and we're going to put them in opposite corners. So this one will go here. And this one will go here. Same thing on this. This one will go up here. And this one opposite will go down here, okay? Now what we're going to do is we are going to create the large half square triangle with the quarter square triangle units. So we're going to go ahead, put this into it, along with one of these guys, and one green quarter square triangle. The easiest way that I can think of explaining this is that it ends up looking like a heart, okay? So if you look at this in a kind of weird abstract way, on this one that I have, it's a heart this way, okay? So you're creating several hearts for intersecting squares, if that makes sense. So always these flats point out, and then whatever's left is what goes there. Then this one goes up to complete the heart, correct? This one always ends up on the edge, right? Meaning that all that's left is the green, which is color 2. The names of the colors don't really matter very much once you have them cut into the correct size pieces, okay? Then this one will end up going, let's put this one first so that we know where it goes. There we go. Like that, because it always goes on the exterior. And this one goes right here. Now we have our completed block. So what we're going to do is we're going to now sew blocks together to then create rows and sections. So this is already sewn together. We're going to sew this, to then sew it to this, and this is already sewn together. Sew this together, and sew this together, and then sew those 3. This is sewn, this needs to be sewn, and this is not sewn yet. So we're going to go over to the sewing machine and talk about how to assemble each of these units, but we're going to keep it on the design board, do it, and then put it back on the design board as we go. That way we're making sure to be able to keep everything in order and have the optical illusion end up in the correct format. So, meet you back over at the sewing machine. Now we're back at the sewing machine. The first block that we need to do on that first row, these 2 are sewn, is this one right here. So in order to sew these units to this, we have to sew these 2 together. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that they're there. If your machine has a straight stitch plate, it's a great opportunity to break that out and start using it. And we'll sew it to this word fabric, making sure it stays in the right orientation, okay? Correct orientation is key. So we're going to sew the 1/4 inch. Put it back in the format that it's supposed to be. Now, it's not pressed. We'll press everything at once, right? But this way you'll be able to see that it's staying in the right format. So we need to sew all 3 of these together. So we're going to go ahead and take these 2. Do you see how easy it is to be able to peel it off the design board? It's why I really like having a design board, so that you're able to do stuff like this. Being able to sew it so easily. So then we'll put this to this and peel this up. Now with this one, we need to make sure that we sew each of these in the correct order, and then on top of that, match that center seam, which we haven't had to do yet. So we're going to stick this on, and then sew this one to this one. We haven't had to do matching seams in any of the blocks, thus the units of this block so far. We've had to do it on other ones. I'm going to turn off my security stitch. Okay, there we go. And then we'll flip this one to this one. Now we're going to make sure they're in the right format. So this one goes here, and this one goes here, correct? Keeping the hearts, right? And then we're going to sew these two together, alternating and nesting those seams. If you want to glue or pin this, by all means. Ta-da, so perfect. So we'll put this back in the format that it needs to be. Kind of sticking it there. Then this one, we need to sew this to then sew it to, we have to sew the 2 quarter square triangles together in order to sew it to the half square triangle. So undo that. And for row 3, we only have to do 1. And so that one is this block right here. So it's just one of those quarter square, 2 half square units. So we'll flip these the way that they're supposed to be. Sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam. And then sew it in the correct order to the larger triangle. Okay, perfect. So off camera, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press all of these blocks that I did. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks, and then start assembling it in rows, and we'll go ahead and talk about that as it comes along. But I'm going to go ahead and press all of these off of camera, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the sewing machine where all of our blocks are perfectly pressed. We are now going to sew rows 1, 2, and 3 together. Make sure that we're using the zip up method or alternating our seams. So if we're going down here, we go up and down and up and down and up and then down and up so that we create a perfectly flat quilt block. So I'm going to go ahead and sew all of the right-hand sides together. All of these individual sections should measure at 4.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead, sew each of these. Go ahead and do row 2. And row 3. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and sew this. So we need to sew in this direction, flipping it. Remember, a sewing machine is made to pull all in one direction, and so we need to counteract that by flipping them. So you can kind of see what I'm doing with that, especially with the aid of a design board. So it appears that my camera lost its battery. So I'm going to explain what we did. We didn't lose that much. I sewed the third row together, and then I explained that I ironed in opposite directions, meaning that I pressed outwards, inwards, and outwards. So out on first row, together towards the center block on row 2, and out on row 3. I am now going to assemble my blocks by nesting my seams together, meaning that I'm rubbing it together and making sure that there's no space in between. Once I have rows 1 and 2 together, I then am going to readjust, check my seams. Oh my gosh, they're actually spot on. And check to make sure that I'm creating the hearts. Flip it, match and sew. Make sure to pin or glue if that's what you feel comfortable with to do. At your sewing machine. Okay, perfect. We have all 3 rows together. Our seams are absolutely stunning, awesome. I'm going to iron this, and then we are going to talk about next class. See you soon. Welcome back, where we have our completed card trick block. We hope that you've enjoyed this block for month number 2 of the Back to Basics Dollar Building Block Program. We can't wait to see you back next month for month 3 for an easy and simple way of doing half square triangles without cutting each of the triangles. We hope to see you next class, and remember, you have a total of about 5 weeks to complete each of your blocks, a month to come to the next class, and then a week grace period following. We hope to see you next class. Happy holidays from all of us at Cloth Studio and Going Batty. Bye-bye.